I sat on the couch, trying to wrap my head around what Cara had just told me. An entire month overseas for some big business trip. She laid it out like it was no big deal, saying her boss had handed her a crucial project that needed her to personally oversee things far away from home. It sounded important, sure, but it hit me like a curveball. I was proud of her, of course, but there was this knot of unease in my stomach. We'd never been apart for so long. Not since we tied the knot. It had only been 3 years since we got married. We were still renting this modest little place on the edge of Milwaukee, a small, cozy spot that suited us for now. Both of us were grinding hard, saving up for a down payment on our first home. The long hours were brutal, but we were a team, and that made it bearable. But lately, something about Cara felt different. She had become laser-focused on her career, working late, snatching up every chance to climb higher. "Where's all this sudden ambition coming from, Cara?" I had asked her not long ago, trying to make light of it. She'd smirked and raised an eyebrow at me. "Because I'm going to out-earn you someday," she teased. "We're still competing, aren't we?" I'd laughed it off as one of her jokes, but now, watching her pack with that determined glint in her eye, I wondered if there was more truth to her words than I'd thought. Cara had always been ambitious, but this was on another level. She kept talking about how her boss was noticing her potential, how she was handling bigger, tougher projects. She even hinted at wanting to prove herself to someone, or maybe everyone. At first, I felt proud of her. She was strong, capable, and driven, and I admired that about her. While she folded clothes into her suitcase, I tried to lighten the mood. "Guess I should be expecting some big paychecks soon, huh? Future CEO and all that." She laughed, rolling her eyes at me. "Just you wait," she said with a grin. "By the time I'm back, you'll be bragging about how your wife's the company star." Her confidence and humor eased my worries a bit. She hugged me warmly, and for a moment, I let myself believe everything would be just fine. When the morning of her flight came, it felt like a strange mix of emotions. Cara zipped up her suitcase after double-checking her passport and everything else she needed. "France for a month, huh? Sounds like quite the adventure," I said, managing a supportive smile. "I hope you get a chance to take it all in." She smiled and brushed her hand against mine before hoisting her bags. "I'll bring you something back, maybe a little piece of the culture." At the door, we shared a long kiss. "Good luck with everything," I said, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. "Thanks, Tyler." "Love you," she replied softly, casting me one last warm glance before heading out. The house felt emptier than I expected once she was gone. The first week crawled by, filled with my usual routine. We kept in touch through texts, short updates from her about how busy work was. Her messages reassured me that things were fine on her end, even though I missed her more than I thought I would. By the weekend, I figured it was time to restock the fridge. It felt bare without Cara around, so I made a trip to a big supermarket across town. As I wandered the aisles, ticking off items from my list, my thoughts kept drifting back to how quiet the house felt. I was reaching for coffee when I heard a familiar voice call out my name. "Tyler? Is that you?" I turned and saw Megan, a bubbly friend from college I hadn't seen in years. "Megan, wow, it's been forever. How have you been?" I asked, smiling. "Great. Just got back from Key West. Funny bumping into you. Are you back already?" I blinked, confused. Back from where?" Her face twisted into a puzzled expression. "Key West," she said slowly. "You know, with Cara? I saw her there a few days ago with some guy. She mentioned you were in town with friends, taking some time to unwind." My smile froze in place, but I forced out a laugh, trying to mask the shock rippling through me. "Oh yeah, right. Just been swamped with work since we got back," I said, my voice tight. Megan's expression softened, her sunny demeanor not wavering. "Don't let it wear you down too much. It was great running into her, though. Glad you two got some time to unwind. Take care, Tyler." She gave me a cheerful wave and disappeared down the aisle, leaving me standing there like I'd been struck by lightning. We'd be splitting everything, including the savings we'd worked so hard for. I took a deep breath, letting my anger settle into something colder, more calculating. She wasn't getting away with this. She was going to pay for what she'd done, but I needed to be smart about it. The weight of her betrayal sat heavy on me all day, a bitter taste I couldn't shake. By noon, I couldn't take it anymore. I left work early, claiming I wasn't feeling well. Once I got home, I started searching for the best divorce lawyers in the area. An hour later, I found myself sitting across from Kay Norris, a sharp-looking attorney who came highly recommended. It was time to start planning my next move. Kai sat across from me, his calm demeanor and calculating gaze making it clear he dealt with messes like mine before. He was in his 40s, sharp as a tack, and his quiet confidence gave me the faintest glimmer of hope. As I laid everything out, Cara's France story, Megan's Key West bombshell, and the blatant lies she told her workplace, he listened intently, jotting down notes here and there without interrupting. When I finished, Kai leaned back in his chair, folding his hands together as he studied me. "You have two main options, Tyler," he said, his tone steady. "First, you could bide your time and gather concrete evidence. If you catch her red-handed, it strengthens your position. This could help you protect your assets and potentially even claim damages for infidelity." The idea of waiting made my stomach churn. My fists clenched instinctively. "What's the second option?" I asked, my voice laced with impatience. Kai gave a slow nod. "Act quickly to secure what matters most to you. If the down payment savings are your priority, we can discreetly move those funds into an account solely in your name. Once they're safe, we file for divorce. By the time she's back, she'll find her options significantly limited." Relief washed over me, mingled with a steely determination. The savings, that's all I care about right now. It's my money too, and I'll be damned if she walks away with a penny of it, I said firmly. Kai's lips curved into a faint, approving smile. "Then we need to act swiftly. Here's what you'll do." Over the next hour, Kai laid out a plan so precise it felt like a military operation. He walked me through the steps to secure our savings, every detail designed to avoid raising Cara's suspicions. His instructions were meticulous, and he left no room for error. The message was clear. The sooner I started, the better. The following days were a blur of calculated moves. Each evening, I combed through our finances, shifting funds under Kai's guidance. Every transfer, every step felt like reclaiming a part of my dignity. By the end of the week, I'd followed the plan to the letter. The money was safe, completely out of Cara's reach. Meanwhile, Kai had drafted the divorce papers, and everything was ready. Now, all that was left was to wait for Cara's return. When she walked through that door expecting life to go on as usual, she'd be hit with the reality of the mess she'd created. The day finally arrived. Cara stepped out of a cab at the curb, her skin glowing from a tropical tan, her movements light and carefree. She looked every bit like someone who'd spent weeks basking on sunny beaches, not slaving away on tight deadlines in France as she claimed. Her mind must have been running through the lines she'd rehearsed. Something about the grueling pace of work, how she'd barely gotten to enjoy the supposed beauty of the French countryside. As she walked up to the house, she froze for a moment, noticing a car parked in the driveway. It wasn't one she recognized. Her brow furrowed briefly, but she brushed it off, probably assuming I had a friend over. She fished her keys out of her purse, ready to unlock the door. Before she could slide the key into the lock, the door swung open. Standing there was a woman in her mid-30s with an easy smile that didn't quite reach her sharp eyes. Beside her stood a young boy, maybe 10 years old, holding a basketball and wearing a backpack. The boy stared at Cara curiously, but the woman's gaze carried something else, something that made Cara visibly falter. Cara forced a polite smile, though I could see the unease behind it. "Ah, excuse me. Who are you, and what are you doing in my house?" she asked, her voice tight. The woman's smile widened, but her tone remained firm and confident. "Oh, you must be Cara," she said brightly, like she was greeting an old acquaintance. Cara could only nod, her face pale as her mind scrambled for an explanation. She opened her mouth to speak, but the woman continued without missing a beat, her tone still polite yet unyielding. "Tyler mentioned you'd be stopping by to pick up your things. I'm Alana, and this is my son, Trey." With a casual gesture, she motioned toward the hallway behind her. "We just moved in. It's such a lovely home. You and Tyler really took great care of it." Cara felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Her suitcase slipped from her grasp, hitting the porch with a dull thud. Her wide eyes darted between Alana and the child standing beside her, her lips moving soundlessly as she tried to comprehend the situation. "Moved in," she finally croaked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do you mean you moved in?" Alana tilted her head, her expression almost apologetic, though a hint of satisfaction lingered in her eyes. "Oh, Tyler didn't tell you?" she asked with a touch of faux concern. "We've been working on this for the past week. He wanted everything to be perfect for Trey and me. So thoughtful of him, really. He said it was time for a fresh start, and I'm just here to help him keep everything cozy." Cara's heart pounded as her grip tightened on the doorframe. Her mind raced, scrambling for any shred of logic to explain what she was hearing. This was her house, their house. Tyler hadn't mentioned anything remotely like this in the short, impersonal messages he'd sent while she was away. "But," she stammered, her voice cracking, "this is my home. I'm Tyler's wife." Alana's expression softened slightly, but there was a glint in her eye, a smugness that told Cara this woman knew exactly what was happening. "Oh, I know," Alana replied in a tone so gentle it felt patronizing. Cara's hands shook as she fumbled for her phone, her breath coming in short gasps. She dialed Tyler's number, her heart racing with every unanswered ring. Finally, his calm, measured voice came through. "Tyler," she cried, her voice cracking. "What's going on? I come home, and there's a stranger in our house with her kid. What is this?" His response was infuriatingly calm, almost casual. "Cara, I ended our lease. The house is Alana's now. She and her son are settling in nicely. I figured it was time to make a clean break. Your things are in the garage," he added with unnerving coolness. "Alana was kind enough to let me leave them there until you got back. You might want to thank her for that." Her pulse thundered in her ears as she struggled to comprehend his words. "Tyler, what do you mean you ended the lease? Why would you?" But Tyler cut her off, his voice colder than she'd ever heard it. "Oh, and one more thing," he said, his tone almost conversational. "There's a folder on the passenger seat of your car. Inside, you'll find the divorce papers. Sign them whenever you're ready, honey. See you in court." The line went dead before she could respond. Frantically, she tried to call him back, but each attempt failed. He had blocked her. Staring at her phone in disbelief, the weight of the situation hit her like a tidal wave, and tears began to spill down her cheeks. Alana, who had been watching the scene unfold with an almost pitying expression, stepped forward and placed a gentle hand on Cara's trembling shoulder. "I'm sorry you're dealing with this," Alana said softly. "Your things are in the garage. I hope you find what you need." Cara couldn't bring herself to look at her, with her mind spinning in a whirlwind of disbelief, rage, and humiliation. She stumbled toward the garage. Inside, she found her belongings hastily shoved into a few worn boxes. Her hands trembled as she clutched the folder left on the passenger seat of her car. The bold black letters, divorce papers, glaring up at her. Tears blurred her vision as she let out a shaky breath. Everything, her marriage, her home, her sense of stability, had been torn apart in one swift, brutal stroke. Climbing into the car, she gripped the steering wheel tightly, trying to steady herself. She needed to go somewhere, anywhere, to make sense of the chaos. Starting the engine, she drove aimlessly before finally heading to a friend's place, her tears falling freely the entire way. 1 week later, the fallout of Cara's return culminated in the courthouse. Tyler sat across from the woman he'd once promised to love forever, now little more than a stranger. The air between them was tense, crackling with unspoken anger. Cara's fury was palpable. She was blindsided not just by the betrayal she felt, but by the precision with which Tyler had safeguarded the savings they'd worked for. She hadn't expected him to act so decisively. Her frustration boiled over, and she hurled ugly accusations, even stooping so low as to call him abusive and aggressive, trying to paint herself as the victim. Tyler, however, remained unfazed. He'd come prepared, armed with his lawyer's advice to stay composed and unresponsive to Cara's theatrics. Her heated words and scathing glares rolled off him like water off a stone. His focus was on one thing: moving forward, leaving her and all the betrayal behind. By the time the hearing ended, Tyler felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him, but beneath it was a growing sense of resolve. He needed a breather, a moment to reconnect with normalcy. That evening, he met up with some old college buddies at a bar in downtown Boulder. They slid into a booth, swapping stories and cracking jokes over drinks. Tyler only touched on his divorce in vague terms, citing irreconcilable differences and leaving it at that. His friends, understanding he wasn't ready to open up fully, respected the boundaries. The group bantered as the night wore on, sharing laughs and trading playful digs. At one point, Dean, one of the guys, excused himself to the restroom. Tyler's eyes lingered on him as he left, noticing something odd. "Hey," Tyler said, leaning over to Coulson with a smirk. "What's up with Dean? He looks like he's auditioning for a sunscreen commercial with that tan. Or maybe he's been hitting the bronzer harder than a bodybuilder." Coulson laughed, shaking his head. "Yeah, no kidding. I think he was on vacation with some girl, Bahamas or something. He hasn't said much about it, though. Dodged every time I asked." The mention of a tropical getaway sent a jolt through Tyler. His brow furrowed as he pressed for more details. "Wait, you said Bahamas?" Tyler's tone sharpened, and Coulson noticed the sudden change in his demeanor. "Yeah," Coulson replied cautiously. "Why?" Tyler's jaw tightened. "Because Cara was supposedly in the Bahamas too. With a guy." Coulson's eyes widened in shock. "Whoa. Are you saying maybe Dean and Cara?" Tyler's silence spoke louder than any words could. Coulson's expression darkened as realization set in. "Man, that's a low blow. What happened to loyalty?" Tyler's mind was spinning. If Dean had been Cara's secret companion, then the truth might be sitting right there on Dean's phone. A plan began to form, and Tyler leaned forward, motioning toward the bathroom. "Listen," he said quietly. "When he comes back, I need him to unlock his phone. Once I've got it, I'll look through it. Think you can keep him from getting in the way if things go south?" Coulson smirked, nodding. "You know I've got your back." When Dean returned a few minutes later, he slid back into the booth and picked up his drink, oblivious to the tension in the air. Tyler kept his tone light, pretending to be casually interested. "Hey, Dean, you've got to share some tips. I've been thinking about hitting a warm spot for a getaway myself." Dean, caught off guard, chuckled nervously. "Oh yeah, man. You know, just the usual spots." "Come on," Tyler pressed, keeping his voice friendly. "Show me some of those beach photos. Give me some inspiration for my trip." Reluctantly, Dean pulled out his phone, unlocked it, and started scrolling through his pictures. Before he could react, Tyler leaned forward and snatched the phone right out of his hand. "Whoa, what the hell are you doing?" Dean protested, reaching for the phone, but Coulson and another friend leaned in, blocking Dean from getting any closer. "Just a quick peek, buddy," Tyler said, his voice icy as he scrolled through the gallery. Tyler's stomach twisted as his worst suspicions were confirmed. There they were, photo after photo of Dean and Cara together on a pristine beach, laughing over drinks at a beachside bar. Their smiles were far too intimate. Each picture drove the knife deeper. Selfies with her leaning into him, shots of them lounging close on the sand, even a sunset photo where her hand rested casually on his leg. Dean's protests faded into background noise as Tyler's focus narrowed on the painful proof. Without hesitation, he began forwarding every photo of Cara and Dean to his own phone. The images weren't just incriminating. They were gut-wrenching. "Tyler, come on. Give it back," Dean stammered, panic lacing his voice as he made another futile grab for the phone. Coulson and the others kept Dean firmly in his seat, their expressions etched with disgust. To us, loyalty wasn't just a concept, it was a code. Since college, it was an unspoken rule we all lived by. No one touched another man's girl, marriage, or dating, it didn't matter. And Dean, of all people, had shattered that trust without a second thought. I kept scrolling through his phone, my stomach churning with every new revelation. When I opened the messaging app, the truth hit like a gut punch. A long thread of messages between Dean and Cara laid everything bare, flirty texts, intimate late-night chats, and excuse after excuse about her business trip. There it all was, blatant and undeniable. I forwarded every message to myself, securing yet another layer of proof. When I was done, I tossed the phone back to Dean, my lips curling in a cold smirk. Here you go. Thanks for the memories. The tension at the table was unbearable. Everyone's focus shifted to Dean, their anger and disappointment glaringly obvious. The betrayal wasn't just personal. It was a blow to everything we stood for. Adam broke the silence first, his voice low but razor-sharp. We had a code, Dean, he said, shaking his head. You don't go near another man's wife. Ever. But you threw all that away for what? A cheap thrill? Dean stammered, his face bright red. It's not what it looks like. Save it, Coulson snapped, cutting him off. We've got eyes, Dean. The photos, the messages, it's exactly what it looks like. And I never thought I'd see you pull this kind of garbage. Dean fumbled for an excuse, his words tumbling over each other. I didn't think it was that serious. I mean, it just kind of... You didn't think, I interrupted, my voice cold and steady, my gaze locked on his. For the first time, he shrank back. You didn't think about loyalty or respect or even basic decency. You thought about yourself. And that's all. The table fell into a heavy silence, the weight of Dean's betrayal suffocating. Finally, I stood, staring him down with a grim realization. You know, Dean, there was a time I'd have knocked you flat for this, I said, my voice quiet but laced with steel. But we both know you'd run crying to the cops if I so much as touched you. Dean flinched, but I wasn't finished. You're not my friend. Not anymore. You're a rat. A stranger. So do us all a favor. Stay that way. I turned on my heel and walked out, leaving Dean frozen in place, his face a blend of humiliation and shame. Coulson and the others followed without a word, their silence more damning than anything else. That night, I finally had everything I needed. The photos, the texts, undeniable proof of Cara and Dean's betrayal. The evidence wasn't just for me. It was my ticket to freedom. At the next court hearing, I laid it all out. Every detail, every photo, every damning message. Cara's face was a mixture of shock, anger, and despair as the reality of her actions unraveled before the room. Her last defenses crumbled, and she knew there was no way out. The divorce was finalized quickly after that. I walked away with our savings intact and my dignity restored, while Cara was left with nothing but the fallout of her own choices. As for Cara and Dean, they tried to keep their relationship afloat, clinging to whatever shallow connection had drawn them together. But the spark faded fast. Within a few months, they drifted apart, their reputations in ruins, and the weight of their actions leaving them empty and isolated. Meanwhile, I moved forward. Word of what happened spread among our mutual friends, and most chose to distance themselves from Cara and Dean. They crossed a line no one could forgive, and the social fallout was harsh. No one looked at them the same way again. The betrayal had cut deep, but in the end, I was better off. I'd gained clarity, peace, and a clean slate. Standing at the edge of my new beginning, I let out a long breath, feeling the weight lift off my shoulders. The future was mine now, unburdened and full of possibility.